Vijaybahu. Wonderful to see you on the call, and thank you for joining. I know it's a little late, but nonetheless, thank you so much for taking time out and agreeing to discuss about how the role of CX is changing, how the world of CX is changing around us, and how being a design leader, how design is becoming an extremely important and centric in whatever we do around CX. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much, I think, Ji, and also to CXNet. I'll be very happy to share my views on something very interesting which is shaping up. So there is a world side of CX and there is an India side of CX. So I look forward to your questions and then see if I'm able to
Sure.
answer. Definitely.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's first talk about the India piece, right? And we'll probably definitely go to the world piece. And now, in India, in the last 4 5 years, there has been a very strong digital adoption across industries, and especially whether it is manufacturing industries or in the service-based industries like telecom or banking or e-commerce, there has been a spurt of digital transformation. As a CX leader, how do you perceive this evolution of CX in India? And what are the key challenges and where are the opportunities you think lie there?
Yeah. So this answer can only be answered broadly, Mridulji, by understanding the world ratio or the world equation. So I'll quickly firstly come because the time is also short. We need to, be a little brief as well. So I first talk about the non-digital concept of the Indian CX. And let me just roll back to about 2,000 years ago quickly. So there was a time when every ghetto or the community, they identified close to 48 to 52 art forms or craft forms. This include the Vaidyas, the carpenters, the metallurgy guys, the even the plastic surgeons. Everything was all kind of packed together. And there was the community buildup used to be between 200 to let's say 400 in numbers. So there the concept of CX was because it was a barter system effectively where everyone knew pretty much everyone in the vicinity in the 200 range. So if you are, let's say, a carpenter or if you are a potter, you knew that your creation or product or service will be used by next door neighbor who is effectively either a friend or a relative, right? So there was a very deep level human touch was there in case if there was a defect in the product, possibly you would actually walk over to that particular center and inform there's a defect. Either you pay up or there's a replacement, whatever the factor was. There was a lot of empathy as well because people used to take charm or delight, let's say, in creating things. It's almost like creating today a modern, if you know that you are creating a handmade product per se, right? In the modern context, right? So there was an era of zero defect CX. So I'll place over there because you knew everyone and everyone could walk over to your door and your center of excellence so called in metallurgy or in jewelry was open pretty much 24 by 7, right? Now the modern dimensions of CX that we have understood is effectively very very different from the yesteryear's 2000 year dimension because it's an imported model. We just hear this aspect a little carefully. We were creating product and services for someone whom we knew or we loved, right? But the Western model of product is you create products and services for somebody whom you don't know because you are effectively exporting that. You are least sometime bothered. You are just bothered that there should not be return, there should not be a refund on a particular case. You're not emotionally connected to that being. In a similar way, we kind of imported the entire model of CX, right, in the product services or a combination of physical product and digital services or pure digital services in a similar era, right? That is why we see so much of friction where just merely chatbots are not able to help the current circumstances because sometimes people would like to sing the entire narrative of what happened and how grievous this entire problem somebody is facing. Case in point, I'll narrate two scenarios and then I'll go over to your next question. So I'm booking a railway ticket today in the peak of a summer season. Case one, where I could easily afford a flight for a family of six, but I'm looking at a model where, yes, let me save some amount by going, let's say, I would say to Dehradun from
Okay.
Mumbai via train. This is situation one. Situation two is I'm someone who's married. I have some domestic problem. Let's say I'm a mother of two. and I'm really not at peace with my current circumstances. Though yes, I'm continuing with my life. Everything seems, okay on the outside. But this summer break in which I go back to my parents' place is so important because it nurtures, it kind of regenerates my soul, right? I know that these 2 months I'll have a life of my own where I will not be maybe, verbally abused, or maybe the tension at the home is not there, right? Similar a situation of doing a train ticket booking, correct? But today my digital apparatus or the digital mechanism is unable to capture the sense of emotion and urgency in my application for applying for, let's say, a Tatkal or booking an AC 3-tier ticket. Do you get both the scenarios?
Right, right, agree.
Where I believe a human intervention is needed, where at least in all situations of a genuine cases where either a student is booking or someone is booking, or maybe the person, and it happened with many people, even in flight booking, you had barely 8,000 rupees in your account. You were booking a last minute Durga Puja ticket, and that seat got booked, payment got deducted. Sorry, the payment got deducted, but the seat never got booked. The airline called back saying, I'll refund the amount in 72 hours. By the time you receive that amount, the price tickets were 14,000 rupees, right?
Right,
So
right.
this is where I sincerely feel that we require a very, very different model for consumer experience, which cannot be a monolithic model, which we have inherited, where the same set of FAQs, questions, the call center trainings, the product design, the sales staff, the way they are trained in Kashmir is same as in Bihar. I believe we have to look into this model in a very different lens.
Very interesting. And I think I I couldn't agree more with what you are saying. Now, I understand, and this is how things have been evolving. And there are certain challenges. We understand that in a mass market situation, you'll have to probably adopt some kind of situation. But
Mm,
how do you bring a balance between empathy,
mm,
right? When you're dealing with things like CX,
mm.
especially when there is specific issues involved, whether in case of urgency where you have to travel because of certain things, whether it is with respect to, emotional issues, or you are making a high value purchase, or you're doing some kind of thing. So,
Right.
so those instances needs to be where empathy becomes more important. And that is why we always say that we need to find the right balance between the technology and the human element
Mm,
together to deliver the CX. And one without the other cannot work.
yeah.
And that is why, as I was talking to you earlier, the CXNet scenario, we are trying to bring the people piece very, very strongly
Yeah.
because we feel that somewhere it is being sidelined because of the heavy reliance on the AI and the need to deliver everything to everyone, the same kind of thing, right? So that is definitely
Yeah.
a very important point which you raised. Coming to the next question, and I will draw from there only.
Mm,
And I understand that is an important model, but I also understand
mm.
that there are very few globally also
Yeah.
models or organizations of brands who have taken customer experience to a new level and beyond the digital piece, which you mentioned earlier. And let's focus on that. Maybe in terms of packaging,
Mm,
maybe in terms of delivery,
mm.
maybe in terms of the usability. And those are the elements. And how do, because you are a design expert, how do you think the design is playing, what role design is playing in delivering a superior CX?
So again, two parts to your answer to this particular question. So one is we need enough effort in dissecting all the journeys. I'll explain. So suppose you are part of you're a fintech world. You have a financial application, and you effectively cater to micro enterprises for shipping out loans, which are day loans for 15,000 rupees and 20,000 rupees. And you understand someone who is running a behemoth for 10,000 crores in steel industry will not really come for that amount. So there is an audience who's looking at maybe purchasing very short term stuff which is worth about 20,000 rupees a day, earn from it and pay back the interest. Correct? That's the model.
Right, right,
And within that, it could be a micro segment of somebody like a 5,000 rupees. So I'm quite inspired by the foundation of the Bandhan Bank. Let's say the entire story covered by Tamil Bandyopadhyay ji, which is the making of Bandhan Bank. of how they really helped out and educated people. So coming back to the story. Now, in this entire cycle, suppose you are a fintech application, and I'll give you two studies where study one, where you try to log in, you're unable to log because the password is not working. And you have to enter there and possibly sell out that item in the market because you've already purchased some inventory.
Right.
Case number one. Case number two is you're trying to change a profile photo or the photo of a product which you had already raised. Maybe you sell bed sheets or whatever, local items, and you're unable to change. The third is where you are unable to accept a payment. The customer is trying to pay, but the payment gateway is not functioning. Which
Right.
of these are the serious ones, right? So you suddenly realize maybe the login could be the serious one, or let's say the payment unable to receive is a serious one. But if I'm not able to change the your display picture or display photograph at the PDP, which is the product display page, that is still okay. I can still survive with the old photograph, right? What we have done is we have not done a very decent weighted average for various of these scenarios, right? That is situation number one, right? It requires a very in-depth study of all your cycles to find out where there is a lot of emotional damage happening at two levels. One is at the customer level. Second, the person who is serving the customer is receiving a lot of fiery calls from the customer. Okay,
Right.
because at the end of the day we are a stressed, like it's a stressed environment. I mean, we understand, sitting in 2025, the mental situation is not that, very saintly in nature with every customer.
Right.
People have outbursts, right? So firstly we need to identify every customer journey with respect to this, the damage in emotional, I would say, balance of a human being, and the damage of, I would say, brand equity with respect to a certain product cycle. This is the first thing I feel sincerely. We require a very different kind of a lens to understand the sensitivity. Now, where the problem? This might sound very interesting. Oh, I mean, it's okay. It's very understood. You're not getting a payment. Why, this cycle should be lower rated as compared to a login cycle. I'll make the problem a little more grave now. Suppose someone's 150 rupees recharge is failing,
Right.
right? Person is desperately trying to reach out the call center saying, "Mera paisa वापस करो," right? Now, the person who's receiving the call, or maybe that entire, I would say, the head of that particular department of that, or the team lead of that particular batch, received this kind of a very agitated complaint from a customer, right? This person, a girl or a boy, grew up in a very, very swanky, I would
Environment.
say, environment, let's say in a Bandra or in Greater Kailash in Delhi, or some of these premium societies in Salt Lake. Okay, this person's pocket money throughout the college was 10,000 rupees a month. I'm referring to pocket money. The day the person is reaching this corporate office premise, the person is coming in a car, which is like minimum a Honda City, a 20 lakh car, which was gifted by the parents to this particular child, says, "Boss, jao aur aap apna drive karo," right? This person is assessing a situation of somebody who is haggling over 150 rupees, right? Will this person be able to do justice to that particular defect in a particular situation? The answer is absolutely no. So there comes a point where we call who is observing the scenario and what is being observed, जिसको दर्शन शास्त्र में हमारे यहाँ दृष्टि और दृष्टा का वर्ड दिया गया। कौन देख रहा है और कौन सी सिचुएशन परखी जा रही है, राइट? I believe this is where the gold mine lies, where there are situations, let's say for super premium products, okay, where we don't know how these people live, because there is a certain bunch of people who are still below 10 crores per annum in terms of their household income. I'm talking about per annum, right?
Right.
But the moment you bridge that ceiling, you breach that ceiling of 10 crores per annum, your lifestyle changes and your demand for CX will also change. Now, to put this person who's using a telecom service, let's say, or let's say a sports good service, with respect to someone else who is also using a sports good service, right, is from a very, very different economic strata. I believe if you have a same person observing these two scenarios, it's a flawed approach of CX.
Okay, so a very interesting observation, and
I don't know whether you're able to actually
So yeah, no,
what we are
I think
looking
a
for.
very interesting observation,
Yeah,
very interesting take of
yeah,
should we have a very democratic setup of the buyer and the seller system so as to have a more empathy?
yeah.
Um, or rather two, and maybe you want to answer the first one, whichever order. The first one is how important therefore
Mm,
training becomes
mm,
when you are handling situations like these in and delivering standard CX?
mm,
Or do you think there should be no standard CX? CX should be customized based on the person's situation, etc., etc.
mm,
So that's my first question. And if your answer is the second one,
mm.
how do we scale that?
Okay. So if you broadly look at that segment, I mean, the best example are the e-commerce models, right? So I try and explain. Uh, the standard CX concept, which is the spray and pray, component where you train everybody on everything, right, is a lot of wastage which is going in the system. The day you start segregating with respect your entire CX bugs, we call that, or the opportunity areas into various segments, you suddenly realize there is a segmentation which is appearing on top. Situations where you require certain kind of people who, let's say, have a far more higher emotional resilience, correct, to handle situations which are have to be handled and very, very important from the company perspective. Likewise, there are low-hanging fruits, which I think the world is already doing that, where the most common of these bugs are already identified and possibly, answered or possibly tackled by AI systems. Case in point, if you know the area, the network in your area is down or there is a maintenance scheduled up, correct? You create your AI system to create customized messages which the person is either forewarned or informed 3 days well
Right.
in advance, right? There you don't have to really bother about a situation where they need a personal one-on-one call, right? Depending now from where and to whom this personal one-on-one call need to go. Suppose that area has a bunch of three universities. They're all dependent heavily on, let's say, the data model. Students use internet, professors use internet. So there you have, and I think that model already exists as well, partly where somebody from the base center will call up the facilitator of that university. So there's a bit of an inconvenience you will face. Kindly, can you just avoid your classes between 5 to 7 p.m. on that particular day? Right? Such that they shoot out some kind of a personal messages within the campus. There, the telecom company is also, shooting out these messages. So it's a mix of these models depending on the gravity of a situation. One has to reach a solution, right? Again, the problem happens. What I've actually sensed by being in most of the CX conferences, uh, till now we are looking at a model which is pretty much like a more homogeneous model, right? Of course, you can do audience segmentation, situation categorization, cohort groups, but there is something called as contextualization for a certain geography or situation or a particular cohort group. That group formation is not there, which is earmarked as, let's say, high maintenance group,
Right.
right? This, yeah. So I think I've kind of
No, no,
answered.
I agree, and in fact, globally such things are there, and especially in US, the training for because having multiple ethnicities there, training for different side of people, different regions is very different.
Yeah.
So as to understand that, and I think if I'm not wrong, some companies are attempting there in India also. But coming back to the conversation, you started with the India and the global. So we've
Mm,
talked about India. Let's talk about the world. And the world, uh, especially when I talk about design playing a role in delivering CX,
mm,
world is far ahead.
yeah.
What is it you think is happening globally?
Mm,
And what is the lessons therefore for India to catch up?
mm. So if you look at the dimensions of, I would say, the digital development broadly, the world of computers from where it started, or computing where it started, it didn't technically start from India. We had, of course, people who participated in that revolution as well, but effectively it started from some bit of this, uh, the non-Indian lands where it started. Now, there were generations who grew up with that. Along with, there was a parallel thing also happening, which was product innovation. So we talk about the way airplanes were built, like
Right.
all the defense equipment was built. Then we talk about computing. Then we talk about imaging. to the point that MIT hosts today one of the maximum number of patents, right from facial recognition to imaging to the fuzzy logic, you name it. I mean, they have it, right?
Right.
Because their model had been very different, where if the industry required a technology piece, they'll go to a university, they will jointly fund that initiative. Patents were jointly divided, and then one part stays with the university, one part stays, let's say, with that funding, organization. It could be G, it could be Westinghouse, it could be anybody, right? And then you eventually reap the benefits in the longer run, right? You develop that and you start exporting. We technically never had that kind of a model where if there was an HTML4 being developed, let's say in US Silicon, and HTML in Bangalore also getting developed simultaneously. We never had that model. Now, so naturally, with digital, I would say, technology and product and industrialization also going in terms of utility products, it was going hand in glove, because a Xerox machine would not just only require the best in terms of tech, in terms of, I would say, fabrication, it will also require softwares to run that, right? So it
Right.
was kind of, hand in glove kind of situation. Now, by doing that, because it's like been there, done that kind of a scenario for them, right? Where when we actually talk about, I was reading about the Bharat OS, right?
Right.
It started, now it's in the cold,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Now, because we never really developed something ground up in terms of, the ground legacy of these, softwares. And again, being an IT person yourself, because I'm from a design background, right? I would like to, you to give me a benefit of, doubt for that reason. So they moved so far ahead. For them, moving into AI, I would call it, or moving into something which manages this customer to, I would say, manufacturer or service provider equation, was a very natural progression, right? So the most common thing, I think it's said in IT parlance, anything which has a pattern or it can be repeated, it
Right.
can be measured by some value, it's bound to get automated.
Right.
So for them, it was so natural to move in that trajectory as compared to someone like us who was still just the consumers of those technology, right? Now, if I seek that situation, fine, everything looks fine, that everything can be today, managed digitally. Most of the conglomerates are saying that their social media handles, all the 99% of queries handling are being handled, almost automatically, where they're just sleeping. Query comes, they get, answered. If there is a certain bounce rate, only then a human intervention will, go into picture. But the only catch over there is, by doing so, we are becoming bit of a docile in understanding the equation of a human to human model in terms of a service or a product driven consumer industry, right? Where the way we used to understand a problem, when there was this beautiful physical touch, right? Whether at a service station of a car, or maybe at a counter of a telecom, complaint center, or something where your courier has, got misplaced. These subtle dimensions of human life are your entry into some kind of a product innovation, or sometime, repairment.
Right.
Is where I sincerely feel our eyes and ears are getting a little close, because somebody is working who is nothing but my, complete automated system, and I'm losing my touch, my emotional touch, to figure out, what is the next dimension of product innovation I need to, go through.
Very true. I think that is a brilliant point, and I think that is something where, uh, as I said earlier, is very important point because we should, while technology is there to help, while technology is there to scale, while technology is there to take the benefits to the lowest common denominator, it should not become a hindrance in getting those elements, those finer nuances, which can help in better innovation. And I completely agree on that point. That's on that note, I will bring this discussion to the end. But before that, I'll ask my last question.
Mm,
Where do you see things heading
mm,
in the area of CX, especially in the service industry, where it is more complex, uh, because of variety of reasons. If I say the service industry in B2B environment, it is complex. But if I say service industry in a B2C environment, the whole customer journey, it becomes extremely complex.
mm.
So in this kind of scenario, where do you think things heading?
See, firstly, is this common race because we have been doing this for last several years. I would say almost roughly post independence, which is a copy and paste model. So whatever we think the world is already at, we try and bring it and call it as best practices. That's why the
Yeah,
we all grew up with this format of imported. The word is
yeah,
imported, whether it's television or technology, or maybe you look at even recently we had this huge thing about vaccines, right? So we are all struggling with a certain mindset. Now within that mindset, some of, I would say, the medium term enterprises or even large, I'm a little skeptical about because it's a game of scale, operation of scales,
right, right,
particularly where people who have grown now from ground zero, being digital natives, realize it's not the pure digital solution in CX which will work, and possibly they need to have space for that agile, customized, yeah, situations, and then see whether I will change my product or always keep an army of situation which is like a SWAT team who will handle certain situations such that my personal touch is maintained. Case in point, today, on your birthday, you wake up and you check your Gmail. You suddenly realize at 12 a.m. in the night, all the insurance companies have shot all these bot happy birthday emails, happy birthday Mridul Shrivastava. How much of empathy you have for that? Cut to a situation where your banker called at 12 noon, like, and every year he calls, just check because he knows your spouse's name, your kid's name, because their accounts are there, right? And just wish everything is fine and just invite you, sir, 2 minute time निकाल के आज चाय पे आइए हमारे पास, right? In your birthday schedule, you actually walk over there and then they create a bit of a surprise for you for just bringing a 40 rupees pastry and you cut it over there, right? This is what we all are craving for. So I'm saying here, there are these multiple situations where we need technology to handle the masses, but to get closer to the people, we also require this human side of component. And I sincerely feel this will come from India because the dimensions of this human component will be very different in Bihar, very different in Uttar Pradesh, very different in Haryana. And from where all of these pockets, if we empower our CS teams, CX teams, customer experience teams, to create their own model of
right,
customer delight within, of course, a certain, I would say, budget framework. Again, by duly getting approvals, let's say from all the digital teams and XYZ, to find out which model is really leading to the customer retention. Is it that AI model, or is it that little thing that you did at a specific time where the person said, "Hey, I'm on fever. My this money got blocked. Can you do something about that?" Right? And I have to really pay to the school. By the time the person realized, because the 30-year-old customer, the person has withdrawn from some kind of a slush fund or an escrow account, whatever you call that, I don't know the terminology, right? Went over to the school and say, Srivastava's son is there in the school. The payment is delayed due to some check signing issue. Why don't you accept the fees? Right?
right,
Right? These are these nuggets, I would say, of humanity, where, of course, in one size fits all model, which is the Fordization of the complete CX, right?
right.
If we are able to wake up from that factor, saying where there is an India answer possibly on that, I'm just waiting for that moment. Of course, I mean, the days we are empowered, we'll also do something, very much similar in nature.
Fantastic. On that note, and that interesting note, on a high note, that maybe one time we look at more of human interaction. Thank you once again, Vijay Bahu, for sparing your evening and having this really different discussion around CX and the human element of CX. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Mridul, and thank you again for CXNet for inviting me here to share my views. And I look forward to maybe more associations in near future. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.